Welcome back to another installment of the Wondercat channel. Today is going to be a deck list I've been playing a large amount of time with, and I thought, unlike previous ones, I'd go over some of the different cards I'd run in it during testing, since ultimately there's two kind of ways you can play this list. It's no surprise when you think about aggro, the first thing that comes into your mind is probably white aggro. This deck can win on turn 2 if they have a great hand, and you're starting off slow or with little removal. Green even has its own version of aggro, using ant tokens to go super wide very quickly. Yellow aggro is in this weird middle ground where it can't be free casting its spirits, but it can spill out entire hands and boards if given the chance. With that introduction out of the way, we can move into the actual list. So our list is going to be comprised of 3 packages tied together with a neat little bow that will work to synergize us a winning strategy. We're going to start off with the first major one, our fabled beasts. It's not only surprise that fabled beasts are the engine that make this deck run, because they have some of the best support in the game for yellow. I'm going to be running 4 copies of Flying Turtle. This little guy has basically been ignored since set 1 as a very underwhelming piece of pseudo card draw, but with this deck he is almost always live, and you can do some quick maths in your head. You usually know whether or not he's going to whiff. We also run 4 copies of both Martyr Bunny and Kachi Rabbit. These 2 little bunnies help increase our 2-drop count and are valid targets for Turtle, so they seem like an easy auto-include. The next of our entourage of animals is another playset of good old Wonderland Cheshire Cat. My other lander, Fabled Beast Boy, makes an appearance here as an amazing support card that will help us free cast certain magic, and again is another 2-drop Fabled Beast Spirit we can flip off of Turtle. We also play a single copy of Mock Gambu. This was a one of the most recent additions to the deck as a potential win con, and can help us turn board states against other aggro decks with its 3k reduction effect. And considering most decks like to play at that 2 life for Ice Shield, all our 2-drops will gain Blessed at 2 life, which is awesome late game if we can get him out. That will make 17 Fabled Beasts in the list, so about 1/3 of the time, Turtle's going to generate you a card on summon. It's not bad. It usually doesn't whiff as, like... You feel like it hits a lot more than that, but... we're also going to play 4 copies of Barask, a card that I've been high on since Set 4's release, and I'm really happy I've been seeing it in some competitive lists lately. The card either acts like a turtle and replaces itself on summon, or ramps you a call, which always helps in this deck since you're going so wide. The card's BP thresholds are negligible, since as long as you benefit off its ETB, it has done its job. Moving into the second package in this list, the Angels. I toyed around with this part a little, and this is where the deck can differ depending on how you would like to play it. We're going to be running 4 copies of Resignation Angel. This card is kind of a win con in itself. Your opponent usually isn't going to have as many 2-drops as you do, so using this to swing with aggressively after everything else, or using it to block with and untapping your entire board, makes it a logistical problem for your opponent during combat. Having multiple of these at level 2 can also remove a pesky blocker or 2 from the board by reducing their BP to 0, but that doesn't come up nearly as often. The next Angel we run, and as bricky as it is for the deck, it puts in so much work, is a playset of Materiel. A 4-drop with 2 reduction that, as long as it can survive until your next turn, gives all 2-drops you control luster. This will become extremely relevant when we get into the Magic package. The card generally isn't one we want to attack with, and will more or less just be used for its static effect to generate value. That being said, we will attack with it if necessary to return that much needed magic back to our hands if our hand is full of 2-drop spirits and no supporting magic. Next, we're going to be running 3 copies of Flora Serra. This card, if comboed with Materiel, can basically give us back all the cores we used to pay for our 2-drops for the turn. It can extend our board a little, which doesn't come up super often, but yeah, this card is basically there to recycle all our cores, and that kind of makes it worth playing. If you don't want to play Flora Serra, or you don't own them, you can run God Beast Behemoth instead. God Beast also puts in massive work in this list, and I'll go into that as to why soon as well. For the Nexus, we're going to be running 4 copies of Phantasmal Paradise, because why wouldn't we? This card with Turtle is just value on top of Turtle. Consistency is key, and with over 30% of your cards being Fabled Beasts, you should trigger this every turn. With 2 of these on board, you can usually win a game pretty easily. You get any more than 2 of these, and honestly, you should have won already. We also run 2 copies of 4-Cloud Retreat. This card has been good and bad, and performs well depending on the matchup. Generally, the way I like to look at it is, if you ramp 2 cores off of this, putting the original 2 cores on it, you've gotten back on your investment. It does really well into token decks, so there is that. If you don't want to play these, you can trade them out for a couple of your supporting magic. So moving into package number 3, our magic. This stuff is super useful and necessary as our angels care about both 2-drops and magic, the glue that holds our deck together. Material giving our 2-drops luster to continuously recast our magic leads to funny turns where we can generate insane amounts of value. So the first 2 cards we should address are our copies of Godslaying, which can be up to the 4 copies if you don't want to play Full Cloud Retreat. Godslaying is such a threat even if your opponent knows you have it in your hand, because they just shake their head knowing that their BP and strength of their spirits means nothing. That Hydra dies to my cute little turtle if you block. It's a great support spell if it was technically, and was technically also a misprint. This card has a symbol in the lower right, like permanence. Why? Who knows? But it's funny and adds to the charm of this card. We also play 4 copies of Gleam of Hope. This card with Materiel on board turns into a 1-cost buff everything 1k and draw a card. This card can be used during the main phase if you're digging for something specifically, or used during the combat step for extra shenanigans and screwing with BP. This card can also be free cast if you play Cheshire Cat beforehand, which is a nice touch. A win con in the magic slot is 2 copies of Reversal Point. The card is more or less a dead card until we actually need it, but swinging and using this in the flash step to give all 2-drops Astral and them having Luster means if you don't get through for lethal damage during that turn, you can always run it back again next turn with it and try again. There isn't enough Astral protection running around and at the moment, so this card can pull wins out of nowhere. The last card of the deck and the secret MVP of the list is Key of Intrusion. This card works well in both the list if you're using Floricera or Godbeast Behemoth. With Floricera, you have added 3 potential targets for it to hit, and with Godbeast Behemoth, it mills you those extra cards, those 2-drops to help with its reduction. This card can cost 4 if used during the main phase, or 1 with reduction, or free cast it with Cheshire Cat played beforehand. Imagine a turn with Phantasmal Paradise on board, playing a Cheshire Cat, drawing a card, free casting this to add a Resignation or a Materiel, or a Floricera to hand to continue all these combo shenanigans. I very rarely use this card in the flash step, as using 5 cores to kill any spirit is generally bad in this deck, since we're just going to be going too wide for a big spirit to matter. If BP or things like Suppression becomes a problem, of course we have Godslaying to get us out of that pickle, or Reversal Point to obviously just get through that, hey, I can block everything. No, you can't. If we mill our magic with Turtle or Key of Intrusion, remember that we can return them to our hand by swinging with Materiel at level 3, which isn't super hard to do. This deck blends the magic spell-slinging nature of yellow with the aggro of yellow with the adorableness of Fabled Beasts, and it's honestly such a fun deck to pilot. Note that this deck does not play Ice Shield, as Ice Shield is too slow for this list. It doesn't help us win, we want to go fast, and so it is more or less a dead card in every hand. The final list is up on the screen for you now. If you want to play those Godbeast Behemoths instead of Floricera, they are interchangeable, just realize that you're trading consistency in parts of the deck. Floricera does help you in the mid game if you can't clutch a win by turn 3, turn 4, but Godbeast is like 5 times more aggressive, and you can summon him as an early threat and really easily with a cheap Key of Intrusion milling 2-drops for you. The deck is 100% a glass cannon. It does one thing and one thing well. It swarms the board. If you play against blue or anything with a decent board wipe potential, you probably won't see much success, but all in all, it's pretty strong, all things considered. This is the first deck list I've done in a while. I've been getting these reps in with this list, trying to get in good practice with it before uploading, so you guys can feel confident that some of the problems have been ironed out. With all that said and done, don't forget to like and subscribe. Keep up to date with future deck lists and my archetype tier lists, as well as the set in review series I'm producing. I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching. Ta-ta.